Look, I have been stationed on 17 different worlds across 4 spiral arms of this galaxy, and I have seen some genuinely ridiculous things. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the sheer comedy of the Terran Military Academy. My name is Krell'nax, military attaché for the Zakreen Dominion, and yes, before you ask, I thought this assignment was a joke too. 6 cycles of distinguished service, 3 combat citations, and they send me to Earth. Earth, the little blue marble where the inhabitants are so soft and squishy that a stern glance could probably rupture something vital. But orders are orders, even when those orders involve babysitting a species that somehow inexplicably fought their way into the Galactic Council through sheer stubbornness, and what I can only describe as weaponized insanity. The Academy itself sits in the Rocky Mountains because, of course, these humans built their premier military institution on top of a geological nightmare where the air is thin enough to make most species pass out. They called it character building. I called it compensating for something, but I kept that observation to myself. Professional courtesy and all that. When I walked, skittered on my 6 legs through those marble hallways, I could not stop the mandible equivalent of a smirk. The whole place screamed trying too hard. Banners everywhere proclaiming honor, duty, excellence, statues of their greatest warriors who, let me be honest here, looked like they would snap in half if you shook their hands too enthusiastically. These creatures average 1.7 meters tall, weigh maybe 70 to 90 kilograms when fully grown, and possess all the natural armor of a soap bubble. And yet, here I was attending their advanced tactical warfare seminar. The classroom was peak human, over-engineering, holographic displays, tactical simulator stations, enough computing power to run a small starship, all dedicated to teaching baby primates how to poke each other with sharp objects more effectively. I settled into a reinforced seat, my chitinous frame creaking slightly, surrounded by 24 human cadets who kept sneaking glances at me like I was the exotic attraction. Which, fair enough, I suppose I was. At 2.4 meters tall with 4 arms and exoskeletal plating that could deflect small arms fire, I did tend to stand out in rooms full of fleshy bipeds. The irony was not lost on me. These humans, these fragile little creatures who evolved on a world they themselves called a Deathworld, were going to teach me about combat. I had fought in the Castor Uprising, survived the siege of Tranthos 7, personally disabled a Vren battlecruiser with nothing but a plasma torch and spite. But sure, humans, teach me your adorable little war games. I had no idea, absolutely none, that my entire understanding of combat was about to get violently recalibrated. Now every military institution across the known universe has that one cadet, you know the type, the one who walks like gravity personally offends them, who takes up twice the space they actually need, whose entire existence screams, "Look at me, I am clearly the apex predator here." Enter Dane Kolvig. This specimen of human masculinity stood roughly 1.9 meters tall, which apparently made him quite large by their standards. Shoulders broad enough to require sideways maneuvering through doorways, arms thick with muscle, jaw so square you could use it as a navigation reference point. His blonde hair was trimmed in that specific military style that somehow conveyed both regulation compliance and aggressive confidence. Every movement was calculated theater, designed to remind everyone in proximity that he was, in his mind at least, the dominant force in any room. And oh, did he perform. Week 1 he made sure everyone knew about his hand-to-hand combat scores. Top of his class, naturally. Week 2, casual mentions of his family's military lineage, 3 generations of decorated service. Week 3, increasingly elaborate demonstrations during practical exercises, complete with unnecessary flourishes that served no tactical purpose but looked, admittedly, impressive if you valued style over substance. The other cadets gave him space, that peculiar mix of respect and wariness that subordinate pack members show the alpha. Some seemed genuinely admiring. Others just looked tired, like they had been enduring this performance for far too long. But here is where things got interesting. And by interesting I mean hilarious. For all his physical dominance, Dane was getting absolutely demolished in the academic portions of the course. Not by much, mind you. His scores were still respectable, still passing, but someone kept scoring higher on tactical analyses, strategic assessments, combat theory examinations. Someone kept raising their hand with corrections when he confidently proclaimed certain tactical approaches. Someone kept, and this clearly burned him worse than plasma fire, making him look second best. I watched the tension build over 3 weeks like watching a pressure vessel approach critical failure. Dane's jaw would clench when scores posted. His knuckles would go white when that same someone politely pointed out flaws in his tactical reasoning. The vein in his temple started making regular appearances. He never exploded, not quite, but you could see it coming, building like a storm system on long-range sensors. I found it entertaining, honestly. Typical primate dominance behavior. Any day now there would be chest beating, maybe some territorial posturing, and order would restore itself according to natural hierarchy. Or so I thought, in my profound ignorance. The person systematically destroying Dane's ego was, and I genuinely did not see this coming, Lieutenant Instructor Mira Volkov. Let me paint you a picture. Mira stood maybe 1.6 meters tall, probably weighed 60 kilograms soaking wet, and possessed all the physical intimidation of a particularly stern house cat. Dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, pale skin, sharp features that seemed permanently set to unimpressed. She moved through the classroom with the energy of someone who had absolutely nothing to prove, and even less interest in proving it. Her voice was quiet, not timid, just controlled, every word measured, every sentence precise. She did not raise her volume to command attention. She simply spoke, and somehow, everyone listened. Well, almost everyone. The first time I saw her correct Dane, I actually felt secondhand embarrassment for her. Poor thing, I thought. Does not understand pack dynamics. He had just finished explaining, loudly, his approach to a hostage extraction scenario. Lots of aggressive entry tactics, overwhelming force, shock and awe. Mira had raised her hand, waited to be acknowledged, then calmly dismantled his entire strategy in 4 sentences, pointed out 3 fatal choke points, 2 equipment failures he had not accounted for, and 1 catastrophic assumption about enemy response time. Then, and this was the truly brutal part, she suggested an alternative approach that would save 16 minutes and reduce casualties by 70%. The room went silent. Dane's face cycled through several interesting colors. It kept happening, week after week, scenario after scenario. Dane would present, Mira would politely eviscerate, the class would take notes. Her theoretical combat scores were not just higher, they were in a completely different statistical category. She saw angles nobody else considered, anticipated variables that had not occurred to anyone, and solved tactical problems like she was doing basic arithmetic. Dane's resentment grew from simmer to boil. You could watch it happen in real time, this mounting fury that someone so small, so quiet, so female, kept making him look inadequate. Now, here is where my confusion peaked. In every civilized species, physical capability determines hierarchy. Larger, stronger individuals lead, smaller, weaker ones follow. Basic evolutionary logic, but humans, these bizarre little primates, put this tiny female in an instructor position over physically superior males. It made no sense. She could not possibly enforce her authority through physical dominance. How did this system even function? I was about to get a very educational, very painful answer to that question. It happened on a Tuesday because apparently the universe has a sense of timing. Mira was walking through an urban assault scenario, explaining suppression tactics and sightline management with her usual clinical precision. Dane sat in the back row and I could actually hear his teeth grinding from 3 seats away. The man looked like he was chewing rocks. Then she made the mistake, or perhaps the deliberate choice, of using one of his previous scenarios as an example of what not to do. Not mockingly, just factually. This approach, while aggressive, leaves your team exposed to crossfire from elevated positions. That was it. That was the moment the pressure vessel finally ruptured. Dane stood up, and let me tell you, when a human male that size stands up with intent, it creates a certain atmosphere. You know, Lieutenant, he said, voice dripping with barely contained contempt, you are real good at theory, real good at pointing out problems from the safety of a classroom, but some of us have actually been in the combat sims, actually trained in real fighting, not just pushed pixels around on a screen. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Every single cadet suddenly found their desk displays absolutely fascinating. Mira turned slowly, face completely neutral. Is there a question in there, Cadet Kolvig? Yeah, actually. He crossed those massive arms. Smile nasty. I am wondering when you are gonna show us you can actually do any of this stuff you keep lecturing about. Because from where I am sitting you talk a great game, but I am betting you could not fight your way out of a wet paper bag in an actual combat situation. Oh, this was good. This was peak primate theater. I leaned forward, fascinated. The other students looked genuinely horrified. Higware. One girl, I think her name was Rebecca, actually whispered, "Oh no," like she was watching a disaster in slow motion. Several others had this weird expression, somewhere between fear and barely suppressed excitement. Mira just stood there, completely still for about 5 seconds. Then, in that same quiet, measured tone, "You want a practical demonstration, cadet?"
Yeah.
Dane's grin widened.
Yeah, I really do. Full contact sparring, right now. Unless you would rather just admit you are all talk, and no action.
Gymnasium B. 10 minutes. Full contact, tap out, or incapacitation ends the match.
She paused, head tilting slightly.
I will even let you wear protective gear. I will not need it. The room exploded into whispers. I settled back in my seat, thoroughly entertained. Finally, natural order would reassert itself. The physically superior male would demonstrate dominance. The female would learn her place in the hierarchy, and we could all move on with proper respect for biological reality. Educational indeed, just not in the way I expected. Gymnasium B filled faster than a hull breach drains atmosphere. Word spread through the academy like wildfire, and suddenly every cadet not currently in critical training materialized to witness what was either going to be a legendary beatdown or career-ending humiliation. Smart money, based on the whispered conversations, seemed unclear on which direction that would go. The sparring arena itself was typical human over-preparation. Reinforced flooring, impact-absorbent walls, medical station positioned at ready distance, enough safety equipment to survive a small explosion. The ring measured 10 meters by 10 meters, marked with bright yellow tape that somehow made everything feel more official and more gladiatorial at the same time. A senior instructor, grizzled man named Patterson, laid out the rules with the enthusiasm of someone who had seen this movie before and knew how it ended. Full contact. Tap out ends it. Unconsciousness ends it. I call it, it ends. Medical override ends it. We clear? Both fighters nodded. Dane bounced on his toes, rolling his shoulders, cracking his neck with theatrical precision. He had opted for full protective gear, padded gloves, chest protector, the works. Spent a solid 5 minutes stretching, demonstrating his flexibility, his reach, throwing practice combinations that whooshed through the air with impressive speed. Every movement screamed intimidation. Look at my power. Look at my training. Look at what is about to happen to you. The gathered cadets watched him with various expressions, some approving, some nervous, some carefully neutral. Mira stood at her corner wearing standard training clothes, no protective gear whatsoever, hands loose at her sides. She did not stretch, did not warm up, did not bounce or pace or show any indication that she was about to engage in physical combat. She just stood there, breathing normally, eyes tracking Dane with the focus of a targeting computer achieving lock. It was unnerving, honestly. Most species have pre-combat rituals, displays of strength, threat postures. Dane was performing his. Mira just existed, completely still like a landmine waiting for pressure. I pulled out my datapad to take notes. This was going to make an excellent addition to my anthropological study on human dominance displays and pack hierarchy establishment. Narrator voice in my head. It would not. Patterson's whistle blew and Dane exploded forward like a missile with anger management issues. I mean, credit where due, the man could move. For someone his size, he covered the distance between them in maybe 1.2 seconds, throwing a combination that had clearly been drilled thousands of times. Right jab, left cross, right hook, all aimed with bad intentions and enough force to crack ribs. Mira was not there. I do not mean she stepped back. I mean she moved with speed that should not have been possible for human physiology. One moment directly in his path, next moment 60 centimeters to the left. Dane's fist sailing through empty air where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. His momentum carried him forward, slightly off balance. That was when she hit him. Not a wild swing, not a haymaker, a surgical strike to his floating rib, precise as a scalpel delivered with her full body weight behind a perfectly angled fist. The impact made a sound, kind of a wet thump that echoed in the suddenly silent gymnasium. Dane's entire body folded sideways. He dropped to one knee, air exploding from his lungs, face cycling through shock, confusion and pain in rapid succession. Wait, I thought. Wait. Hold on. That does not match. That should not have happened. The man outweighed her by probably 30 kilograms, had reach advantage, had strength advantage, had every single physical metric in his favor, and she just casually dropped him with one hit. Dane sucked in air, eyes watering, and the confusion on his face transformed into pure rage. He surged upright, threw a wild overhand right with enough power to dent steel plating. Mira swayed backward, the fist missing by millimeters, then stepped inside his guard and delivered 3 strikes in the time it took me to process the first one. Throat, solar plexus, inside of his lead thigh, each one precise. Each one exactly hard enough. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force, just clinical application of violence to specific anatomical targets. Dane staggered, guard dropping. Her fighting style was not aggressive. That was what made it so deeply unsettling. She did not attack like a warrior seeking victory. She moved like a surgeon removing a tumor. Calm, focused, almost gentle in her efficiency. Every movement had purpose. Every strike hit exactly where intended. No emotion, no excitement, no fear. Just work being done. I stopped taking notes. My datapad hung forgotten in my primary hands while my secondary hands gripped the bench I sat on. Something was very, very wrong with my understanding of humans. Dane reset, breathing hard, and tried again. Big looping left hook, telegraphed from approximately next Tuesday. Mira ducked under it, and while doing so actually started talking. Not to Dane, to the class. "Notice the wind up," she said, voice perfectly calm, perfectly conversational, like she was commenting on weather patterns, instead of dismantling a human being. "Excessive shoulder rotation before the strike gives you approximately 0.7 seconds of warning, more than enough time to counter." She demonstrated by driving her elbow into his kidney as she came up from the duck. Dane grunted, twisted, threw a knee that would have shattered her sternum if it connected. It did not connect. "Knee strikes are excellent close-range weapons," Mira continued, redirecting his leg with minimal effort, using his own momentum to spin him partially around. "But they require proper setup and distance management. Without either, you are just exposing your own balance." She swept his supporting leg. Dane hit the mat hard, rolled, came up throwing a desperate combination. Nothing pretty, just aggressive volume of violence. Mira slipped through it like smoke, and I swear to every deity in the galactic pantheon she was giving a lecture, an actual tactical lecture, while fighting. When overwhelmed by multiple strikes, do not try to block everything. Redirect, parry, evade the critical targets, accept minor contact on non-vital areas. She demonstrated, letting one of his jabs glance off her shoulder while simultaneously striking his extended elbow joint with her palm. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to send nerve pain shooting down his arm. Then exploit the openings created by their commitment. Several cadets were taking notes, actual notes, while watching their classmate get professionally deconstructed. Dane was breathing ragged now, sweat pouring down his face, that earlier confidence replaced by something between desperation and dawning horror. He threw a front kick, proper form, good technique. Mira caught his foot, and I heard her say, "Good extension, but you are on one leg now," which means, she twisted. He lost balance, hit the mat again. "You have sacrificed stability for range." She let him get up. Every single time he went down, she stepped back, waited, let him regain his feet. That was when the true horror clicked into place for me. She was not fighting him. She was teaching a class that happened to involve hitting him repeatedly. Every strike she landed was calibrated, measured, designed to cause pain and demonstrate a point but not actual lasting damage. She could have ended this in the first 10 seconds. Instead, she was turning his humiliation into a comprehensive lesson on combat theory made practical. The other students watched with a mixture of awe and terror. Rebecca was literally writing down timestamps and techniques. And Dane, poor stupid Dane, kept trying, kept attacking, each attempt slower, sloppier, more exhausted than the last. Each one met with another calm correction, another precise counter, another educational moment. My earlier amusement curdled into something cold in my thorax. Humans were not supposed to be this dangerous. They were small, fragile, weak. Except apparently they were not. Not even slightly. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Mira was not even breathing hard. Dane made one last attempt, and you had to respect the sheer stubborn refusal to quit, even if the intelligence behind that decision was questionable at best. He roared, actually roared like some kind of ancient earth predator and charged with everything he had left. No technique anymore, no strategy, just raw, desperate aggression fueled by humiliation and oxygen deprivation and the vertebrate brain stem screaming that he needed to establish dominance right now or die trying. Mira sighed, actually sighed, like a teacher disappointed that a student had not learned the lesson. Then she ended it. Sidestep, minimal movement, just enough to redirect his momentum past her, palm strike to the base of his skull as he went by. Not full force, just enough. His legs stopped communicating with his brain. Ankle sweep because gravity is undefeated. He was falling now, already unconscious before he hit the mat, and she guided his descent almost gently, making sure he did not crack his skull on the reinforced flooring. The whole finishing sequence took maybe 2 seconds. Total fight duration by my chronometer, 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Felt longer, felt like watching a continent slowly sink into an ocean. Dane lay there, sprawled and breathing but deeply, profoundly unconscious. Mira stood up, rolled her shoulders once, and her breathing, I kid you not, her breathing was barely elevated, like she had taken a brisk walk, a casual stroll through the park. The medical team rushed in with practiced efficiency that suggested this was not their first unconscious cadet rodeo, checked his vitals, scanned for concussion, loaded him onto a hover stretcher with the kind of professional boredom that comes from repetition. He will be fine, one medic announced. Bruised ribs, strained elbow, mild concussion, wounded pride, standard training injuries. Back on duty, in 48 hours. Mira nodded, then turned to the assembled cadets like nothing unusual had occurred. Right then, let us break down what just happened from a tactical perspective. Rebecca, you were taking notes. What did you observe about distance management in close quarters combat? Rebecca, bless her, actually answered. Voice slightly shaky but professional. You maintained optimal striking range while denying him the same, ma'am. Correct. Anyone else notice the breathing patterns? Hands went up. Questions flowed. The class transformed back into a classroom, with a recently unconscious student being wheeled past as a visual aid. I sat there, all 4 hands gripping my datapad, watching this tiny human female conduct a technical debriefing on how she had just systematically dismantled someone twice her mass. My species had fought wars across 3 sectors. We prided ourselves on martial prowess. And I had just watched a human the size of a standard cargo container casually dismantle another human while teaching a class. What in the name of all spiral arms had we gotten ourselves into by letting these creatures join the Galactic Council? After class dismissed, I cornered Administrator Phillips in the hallway. Phillips was older, gray-haired, walked with a slight limp that suggested old injuries, and possessed the weathered appearance of someone who had seen significant action and lived to develop opinions about it. That, I gestured vaguely toward the gymnasium, requires explanation. Phillips smiled, the knowing smile of someone about to ruin your entire conceptual framework. Lieutenant Volkov put on a demonstration, did she? Demonstration implies teaching. That was systematic destruction disguised as pedagogy. Yeah, that sounds like Mira. He pulled out a data pad, pulled up her service record, handed it over, figured you might have questions. I read, then read again. Because surely the translation software was malfunctioning. Lieutenant Mira Volkov, 12 years active service, Special Forces, Counterinsurgency Operations, 4 combat deployments to what humans casually called hot zones, which apparently meant places where people actively tried to kill you on a regular basis, hand-to-hand combat instructor certification, advanced tactical operations specialist, commendations for actions she was not allowed to discuss due to classification levels that made my security clearance look like a library card. She has killed people, I said, statement not question. More than she probably remembers, Phillips confirmed. Tone matter of fact, Mira is what we call a operator. The kind of soldier we send when the situation has already gone completely sideways and we need someone to unsideways it through applied violence and tactical expertise. But she is, her size, her physical, she cannot possibly match up against a male opponent in pure strength. No, you are right. She cannot. Phillips leaned against the wall. That is why she does not fight using strength. Humans figured out a long time ago that technique beats power, speed beats strength, and knowledge beats everything. Mira has spent over a decade learning how to turn human bodies into non-functional status as efficiently as possible. Size does not matter when you know exactly where and how hard to hit someone. My mandibles clicked involuntarily. That fight, she was holding back. Oh yeah, massively. Dane is a student. Cocky, needed his ego adjusted, but still, just a kid learning. If Mira actually wanted to hurt him, Phillips shook his head. He would be in surgery right now, not the infirmary. She pulled every single strike. That was her pulling strikes, I said flatly. Welcome to humanity. We are squishy, yeah, but we have spent our entire evolutionary history finding creative ways to kill things bigger and meaner than us. Turns out, we got pretty good at it. He paused. Also, pro tip, never assume human females are less dangerous than males. Different physical specs, sure, but violence is a skill set, not a gender assignment. Some of our most effective operators are women. They tend to be sneakier about it. I looked down at Mira's service record again, at the list of deployments and commendations and classified operations. Your species is terrifying, I said. Yeah, Phillips agreed cheerfully. We really are. Coffee? I filed my report 3 days later, after considerable deliberation about how to phrase observations without sounding like I had suffered a psychological break. To the Zakran Military Intelligence Directorate. Subject: Human Combat Capability Assessment. Classification: Priority Alpha. After extensive observation of Terran military training protocols, I must revise all previous assessments regarding human martial capability. Previous reports describing humans as physically inferior, and therefore limited in combat effectiveness, are dangerously, catastrophically incorrect. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not rely on natural advantages like size, strength, armor plating, or venom. Instead, they have weaponized knowledge itself. They study anatomy, physics, leverage, and apply these principles with disturbing precision. A human, 1.6 meters tall and 60 kilograms, can neutralize a target twice their mass through technique alone. I have witnessed this personally. It was educational in ways I am still processing. Furthermore, and this is critical, human gender dimorphism does not correlate to combat effectiveness in the way we assumed. Their females are not weak. They are not protected non-combatants. They are fully integrated into military operations and are, if anything, more dangerous due to our tendency to underestimate them. The galaxy's traditional assumptions about female warriors do not apply to humans. At all, not even a little bit. Humans look harmless. This is their most dangerous feature. They evolved as persistence hunters on a Deathworld, and they approach combat with the same patient, methodical mindset. They do not need to overpower you. They will simply outlast you, outthink you, and dismantle you with the casual efficiency of someone performing routine maintenance. Recommendation: treat all humans as potential combat threats regardless of size, gender, or apparent physical capability. Their danger is not in what they look like but in what they know and how they apply it. Additional note: I am requesting permanent assignment to the Terran Military Academy for continued observation and study, for military intelligence purposes, of course. Definitely not because I am terrified of what else I might not know about these bizarre, squishy, absolutely horrifying primates. Respectfully submitted, Krell'nax, military attaché who has learned some very humbling lessons about assumptions. I sealed the report, sent it through encrypted channels, and returned to class. Mira was lecturing on orbital drop tactics. The Dane sat in the front row, noticeably quieter, noticeably more attentive, sporting some impressive bruising, and what looked like a severely adjusted attitude. I took notes, very detailed notes. Humans, I had learned, were excellent teachers. The lessons occasionally hurt, but they stuck with you. And I had so very much left to learn.